We are joined by Miles, and David's still here with us, and we're talking cars again. We had some new car announcements this week, actually, and we mainly just want to talk about one of them.
Yeah,
I'll summarize the announcement, and then we can talk about our thoughts. How about that?
Yeah, let's do it.
So Porsche announced the newest generation of the 911, their iconic sports car. Porsche 911 gets updated every couple of years, and there's a huge lineup, but they gave us two of the base cars, the Carrera and the Carrera GTS, and it's a hybrid for the first time. Now, this car has not been a hybrid in its entire existence. The 911 has always been internal combustion, whether it's turbocharged or not, but this first hybrid version people were very curious about because Porsche always makes the tiniest refinement changes to the 911. And this hybrid thing has a reputation for making cars heavier and maybe a little bloated and a little over-technical. And so we were curious how Porsche was going to do it. So they gave us these two base cars. They have way more total horsepower than before. They seem to have a pretty solid solution, small 2 kilowatt-hour battery, 2 electric motors, I believe. One of them is working with the single smaller turbo instead of having twin turbo. It seems like a pretty good solution, only adds 50 kilograms to the cars. And they also changed some design elements to the front, to the back, to the interior, and that's the new cars. We don't know what the rest of the 911 lineup, like the Turbo or Turbo S, will look like. That's later announcements down the road. But and also we don't expect a fully electric 911 anytime soon. That may not be another 2 generations. But we have the first hybrid sports cars from Porsche. Now, our feelings on them. I'll start with my thoughts. I never thought I would become that guy because I've watched so many Porsche videos. Like, this is what happened when I went into like deciding if I wanted to buy this car or not, is I watched every video that's ever been made about the 911. And there is this section of YouTube where it's like purists who only like the older generation 911s. And they're like, the new one, that thing sucks. The old ones, that's where it's at. And I'm like, geez, I like the new one. It's tech, kinda. I feel like I'm into the new one. And I'll probably always be that guy. And then they announced this new one. And I think the hybrid drivetrain is actually probably the best part of it. But the interior, they changed a couple things that I specifically dislike, that I don't have any good reason to dislike other than the current one is better. So the first thing is every 911 for many, many years has had a twist, like not an actual key to twist to start, but they've had the ignition on the left side of the steering wheel. And this is the first one that they're making just a plastic push button start, just like a Macan or a Cayenne. And I don't like that at all. The other is the tachometer is just an all-digital display now, that's most cars these days, let's be honest. Like, they just have screens. But the current generation 992 actually has a real, like, physical needle, and it has screens to the left and right, but has a real needle tachometer. And I love something about that. Like, it's just like a watch. Like, I've never had these feelings about any device before, and now I see, like, a fully digital one, and I'm like, oh, that's not the same. Like, I've never, and I'm the dude who's wearing an Apple Watch. Like, I don't want a Rolex seems like the dumbest thing ever to me. So I'm like, I didn't think I would become this guy, but I really feel this way. Yeah. Miles, how do you feel about the new 911?
My feelings are exactly the same. The fact that it's a hybrid system, which, makes it faster, but it's now heavier, bigger, and more expensive. That's not like what my problem is with this car, which is what some people are saying is an issue. They would just prefer it to just be pure ICE. Mm-hmm. It's just the fact that they're, like you said, changing things that we have known and associated with Porsche just to say, hey, this is new and different. It's funny because I was filming the new Cayenne just last weekend, and I was talking about the push start button. I'm like, it's a Cayenne, okay, fine, I'll deal with it. But the 911s, right, they're going to leave that alone. They're not going to, there's no way they're going to change the ignition switch, right? So with the older Porsches, like you said, you used to be able to just take your key, put it on the left, and then crank it to start the engine. And then with 992, they changed it, your car, where
it's like a knob.
It's just a knob that
twist
you switch
where the key would be.
So it's like, and that actually makes a bit more sense with a modern car, and it's still the same thing. You get the same effect.
It was a nice hybrid between a push-button digital thing and like an old-school key. I don't have to have a key, but I still get the satisfying like physical motion.
Right. So
I thought that was great.
Apparently, this is what Porsche customers want, according to Porsche.
No,
so
what?
it's so funny. I happen to have a Porsche customer sitting right here next to me. So Dr. Brownlee.
David, you have a Porsche?
No, that's Andrew in the last episode.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So Dr. Brownlee, I have to ask you,
Yeah.
do you actually want a push to start button?
So in a car that has an engine, I get it, but no. And the thing, I think when they say this is what Porsche customers want, I think what mathematically they're saying is, well, lots of people bought Cayennes, so seems like people are okay with it. And mathematically, they're probably right. And people will still buy it and use it, and it'll be fine. But I couldn't possibly argue in any way that it's better, other than maybe being simpler physically to manufacture. But it's Porsche we're talking about. When has that been a concern? Yeah.
It wasn't a concern until now. This is the first time where I've seen Porsche announce a new car and me just be like, this is just not good for a nonsensical reason. Like, all these other companies are making their engines smaller and doing all these things to comply with like emissions laws and things like that. That's totally understandable. But this is just one of those things where it's like they're just changing it for essentially no reason. And I don't think there's anyone on earth who's like, yes, this is the better version. So let me ask you again. Apparently, Porsche customers requested that the gauge cluster be fully digital.
Really?
Yes.
Requested.
I mean, that's why they did it. They say this is what Porsche customers wanted. They wanted their gauge cluster to be fully digital.
You can also just say things.
They can also just tell
They
us.
can also just say that people said that.
I will say I've watched a lot of videos on the last couple of generations of 911, and I didn't hear anyone ask for that. What I did hear about the 992 is the gauges were a little bit too wide, and so they were kind of hidden by the steering wheel. Almost every car reviewer mentioned that at some point. I don't think I translated that to make this all digital. I just heard that as I have to figure out anything wrong with this car, and it seems like that's one thing that everyone finds wrong with it.
But the thing is, that was the side menus. That wasn't, they weren't talking about the tack in the middle, which was the only element that was still analog, and then they said, no, that's digital now too.
Yeah, doesn't translate for me.
Do you think that's more expensive or cheaper to do, a completely digital screen versus an analog tack?
I think it's cheaper because it's one screen. So before we had the analog tack in the middle, which I'm sure they make a ton of, and it's not super hard to manufacture, but then they had one screen on the left and one screen on the right. And now you just have one big screen. And I think we also saw an article, something about how they're going to have deeper integration with CarPlay. I haven't seen what that actually looks like yet. I'm sure it'll just be, you can have the map in front of you instead of just on the screen to the side. Cool. Great. I think it's just a little cheaper to make one screen instead of two.
But that's another thing, right? When they announced the whole next-gen CarPlay thing and they announced that Porsche was going to be the first people they're working with, it's like, I feel like I don't know anyone who owns Porsches who wants their UI to look like an Apple car.
Maybe Cayenne. I mean, I think, I don't know anyone else who wants that either. I think there's a lot of people who just want it to work like their phone, and that's good enough, and CarPlay is that for most people. But there is also a specific subset of Porsche buyers, because let's be honest, most people buying a Porsche are buying a Cayenne or a Macan, and it's just the one that they wanted, and it's a casual commuter, whatever. But there's a subset of those people who are purists who really, really care about, the driving dynamics and the weight of the car and the way it handles and all sorts of smaller things that are more traditional. And those people didn't ask for that at all. They never, I don't think I heard any of them ask for that. So it seems like they're listening to group number one over group number two, but it's the 911, so it feels like there's less of group number one buying the 911. It's kind of weird.
That is true.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the Porsche 911 is fast, right? That's why people like it. You mentioned that because now it's that it's hybrid, it's heavier. Mm-hmm. Does that affect how fast it is? Is it now slower as well?
No,
so
it's faster.
It'll be quicker.
It's faster.
So here's the fun part of the driving dynamics. I think it will drive better, and I'm going to speculate even a little bit on the Turbo and the Turbo S later, but they've already shown the Nürburgring lap time of the GTS, and it's just as fast as, it has more horsepower than the outgoing Turbo.
Than the non-S Turbo.
The Turbo. So it is a more powerful car, but the thing about turbos is they take time to spool up and actually accelerate faster. There's just an inherent lag, and you can You can deal with it with your gearbox by always being close to on boost, and they've been really good at that, but it's not lag free. When you drive a Taycan or an electric car, that instant torque is totally different from the feeling of a turbocharged engine. And I think this hybrid system is going to give, like we talked about in our hybrid video, it's going to give people that instant acceleration feeling when they hit the pedal. It won't be full on all of your power, but it'll feel more responsive. And then, of course, when you combine the power of the engine and the electric motors, you will have more total power and accelerate faster. So it'll feel like a more responsive car. And I think that's good for most people. I think they'll enjoy it. They managed to kind of minimize weight gain. 50 kilograms isn't nothing, but it's a tiny battery, so it's not a disaster. These aren't the featherweights of the car world, so I feel like it'll drive better. But yeah, it's just the little interior things kind of got to me.
So you are Porsche's demographic, right? You're the person who they're targeting with their sports cars, right?
Yeah.
I think Marquez is like 45 years younger than the person that they're targeting with their sports car.
Normally,
they could
because people his age don't usually have $250,000 to spend, like on a sports
But if they
car.
could pick their ideal, they would want everyone who's buying if they're people who are buying Lamborghinis and McLarens and other things, they would want them to buy that too, and then be a repeat customer for however long they're alive, ideally.
So my question is, what does Porsche have to do with the yet to be revealed turbo to make you feel like you would want to upgrade and buy it?
Wow. It's all about the drive. It would have to drive that much better that it overcomes the things that I dislike about the interior. Again, there are other things that are fine about it. Most of the interior is still going to be the same. I don't have as much of a problem with the facelift as some other people do. There's these new like active aero flaps in the grills at the front, and they replace the dedicated blinkers with like just the headlights blink. So it's a simpler face. Some people hate it. I think it's fine. It's mostly a similar car. It's very recognizable. I just want to know how much faster and how much better it drives. That's really most of what I want to hear about with the Turbo S when it comes out. And it'll be like a year before we hear about it. But I want to hear battery size. I want to hear total power. I want to hear like responsiveness, 0 to 60 times. I want to hear that type of stuff with that car.
I think from now until this car comes out, we should all get familiar with how driving a Porsche 911 feels by taking turns with a certain person who has one.
I do my best to describe it, but like, I don't know. If you watch videos of turbocharged cars driving, you slam on the accelerator pedal in an EV and you just go. If you slam on the accelerator pedal in a naturally aspirated engine car, it can feel pretty close to that level of responsiveness. If you slam on the accelerator in a turbocharged car, a twin turbo car, it will start to accelerate, and then as you climb in revs and build boost pressure, you surge forward in like a crazy way. Who was in the Speedtail? Was it just you? You were in the Speedtail?
No, we were talking about the lack of turbo lag because we had both also done the P1 together.
The P1.
So we had like a really good reference point of like, because the P1 is like fast off the line and then the turbo kicks in, but the Speedtail was just.
So these are both hybrids.
The P1's a hybrid too?
Yes.
Oops,
these are both.
I sound pretty stupid.
No,
now.
but these are both turbocharged hybrids that we are driving, and this is also a turbocharged hybrid that we're talking about. But if you drive a non-hybrid turbocharged car, there are a couple that are nicknamed the Widowmaker because you could be driving around a track and you could hit what you think is the right point to accelerate, and then you get this boost that gives you way too much power, and you just kick the tail out. Like, I don't want to say it's unpredictable, but the way the power comes on with a turbo is way more of a surge than what an EV will give you.
The Speedtail and the P1 at least both give you a really solid warning because right before you get kicked, it goes.
Yeah, you hear the intakes go crazy. It's yeah, that is the feeling. No, but it is. That's exactly what it is. It's a symphony of a bunch of different things happening at once that make you go faster.
Did you see the picture of the drivetrain they published with all the press photos?
Porsche?
Yeah, it's a very silly looking photo. I'm just gonna bring it up right now.
Yeah, they did a whole like unveiling live stream video on YouTube that we watched, and it was very German. It was like one person going, I heard you made it a hybrid. Tell us about that. And then like some trance music as they do like a transition to a different part of the same room. And he goes, it is a hybrid. And then he starts explaining it. It's great. I was hoping they would do like an Apple transition where they like do a drone shot to like a different part of the same room. They didn't do it though. It was great.
You brought up the word Widowmaker, and that brings me to like one of my final points with the 992.2. There's been one car that everyone has kind of just like forgot about.
Which one is that? GT2 RS?
GT2 RS. So the term Widowmaker, like the GT2 RS, that was the original Widowmaker, like back in the day. Because it was just a
rear-wheel drive
turbos,
turbos,
like 500 something horsepower, but like no nannies, right? So it's just like if you screw up, you screw up.
No what?
No nannies.
No nannies? Like Mary Poppins?
no hand holding.
Yeah, no hand holding.
Okay, I get it now.
Just like no, like a lot of people these days think they're good drivers. That's just because there's all these like
Because traction control is amazing.
there's all these traction control systems that like allow you to feel confident doing kind of like stuff you maybe shouldn't be doing on the public road. But this is a car where it's like you just have to be good. And so I think this is going to be like an 800 horsepower, all the power to the rear, hybrid.
You think GT2
Crazy
RS
aero.
will be a hybrid too?
Yeah, because they're going to need something crazy because what's coming out this summer is the Corvette ZR1,
Right.
which is going to be like kind of the similar philosophy.
What is the comp in Porsche's lineup of the ZR1? Is that their GT2 RS or their GT3 RS?
Some would say, I think most people would say GT3 RS,
Okay.
but then Corvette's also going to have Zora, which is going to be,
They like Zs.
they like their Zs.
Okay.
It's going to be an even more extreme version of ZR1. So
Okay. So
forced induction Z06 motor plus hybrid.
Jesus. Yeah.
It's going to be scary.
So in order to compete, this is also the other thing is I'm sure Porsche feels some level of competition from other cars coming out in their price brackets. And so, yeah, if you're going to try to be, you know, competitive speed-wise, it feels like you have to electrify your lineup at some point. And the purists at the very purest end of it are like, no electricity, no hybrid system. We need it to be naturally aspirated, etc. But I think the hybrid is a good move for these cars. It's just a matter of like keeping it 911.
One rock a day honestly doesn't sound like too bad of a diet, but I'm not a medical professional and I'm not giving you that advice. What?
Does
It
rock
depends on
candy
the rock.
Yeah, rock candy,
Geodes,
geodes, which is a rock.
Laffy Taffies, which are basically rocks.
Oh, you know what?
Mike
you know what
Ice.
is also a rock that actually could qualify as food?
Vitamins.
No.
Yes.
Well, vitamins, yes. Yeah. Well, good point.
Vitamins are kind of rock.
Okay.
Licorice,
No.
Dots,
I love dots.
I think is it
I love
Captain
dots.
Crunch?
Wait, dots or Dippin' Dots?
nerds.
Regular
Wait,
dots.
is it Captain Crunch? I think Captain Crunch
Oh.
is like freaking razor blades. in your
Eating it
mouth,
is like
bro.
eating rocks.
Yeah,
And
it
delicious
cuts your
rocks.
mouth up so much.
grape
Tortilla
nuts.
chips.
grape nuts.
Nuts.
Grape nuts are rocks.
Grape nuts are in tortilla chips.
There's a weird Clips outro.
Captain Crunch
Captain Crunch.
is like eating rocks. It tastes good.
Let's ask.
Gemini,
Like and subscribe.
Please.
Google. Wait, Google.